Again, my presentation. Good morning, Professor Ting Ting U, and good morning to classmates. So I want to present one article, and the title of this article is Development Paradigm in the Institutional Configuration of Vocational Education and Training in Chile in 1964 until 2005. By Oscar Valiente, Leandro Sepúlveda, and Adrián Zancajo. Before I beginning my presentation, so I want to introduce myself. My name is ANITIYO SOELISTIYONO. Okay, I will begin my presentation. So this article include in Journal of Vocational Education and Training, number 32. High index, and include in Q1 journal. I will begin my presentation. Introduction of this article explain about approaches in comparative education have paid more attention to trends in donors' priorities than to policy processes in recipient countries, overlooking the agency of national government in the institutional configuration of vocational education and training (VET) in developing contexts. According to Aston, Durbin, and Sung, 2000, that these institutional variations were caused by the limited capacity of government in developing countries to resist the influence of multilateral financial organizations and respond to the challenges posed by economic globalization. Still, introductory aim to contribute to international debates by analyzing how the interplay between global and national drivers of policy change shape the institutional configuration of PET system in developing countries. Okay, I will continue to the next slide. Research for article explain to analyze the role played by global development paradigm and ideas in the VET policy reform adopted in Chile during the period between 1964 and 2005 to show how the selective adoption of international development ideas in Chile was mediated by the ideological orientation of national government administration in each historical period. So then, to show how the main goal of VET policies evolved as the economy tertiary and the demand of education grew among lower social classes. Issues of this article explain about the configuration of VET system in the developing context. For many years, mainstream approaches in comparative education, i.e. work culture theory and international political economy, paid more attention to global drivers than to the policy process in recipient countries, assuming that government in developing countries had no or little capacity to resist external pressures that were adopted of global development ideas. Still, number 1, structuralism. In 1964 until 1973, the broad electoral victory in 1964 in Eduardo Frei, the candidate of the Christian Democratic Party, supposed the beginning of the end of the state of commitment, a political alliance between the right and the center-left which ruled Chile from 1938. Beyond the political consequence of this electoral victory, it also supposed the end of a period of pro-liberal political and economic reform that was replaced by the structuralist development strategy characteristic by the increasing role of the state and central planning. By Taylor, 2003. The adoption of development development paradigm in Chile was strongly influenced, among other factors, by its promotion across Latin America by UN agency ECLI. Latin American structuralism was mainly based on the ideas that the neoclassical approach to development might be adequate for northern countries but not for peripheral economics by K. 2009. To overcome the limitation of the neoclassical approach, the ECLI strongly advocated by import substituting economic policies as a means to switch from the outward-looking development to an inward-directed one. Issues or content of this paper. Number 2, explain about neoliberalism in 1973 until 1989. The coup d'etat led by Augusto Pinochet in September 1973 against the socialist government of Salvador Allende caused a drastic shift in the Chilean development paradigm. The next slide explains about the model and strategy of development imposed by the military dictatorship were based on 3 main components. The first component is a policy approach to economic development based on monetarist principles. Second, the privatization of state assets and the involvement of private actors in the provision of public service. The last of this main component is the establishment of market mechanism of coordination of supply and demand in different social sectors and the deregulation of this sector. The issues is growth with equity in 1990 and 2005. Explain about the restoration of democracy inaugurated a period where the development strategy of the country tried to combine both economic growth goals and equity improvement. This approach became to be known as growth with equity. The reason for the center-left government not to receive the market model imposed by the dictatorship in education are diverse, but what is clear is that the inheritance of this institutional setting restricted and significantly influenced and the policy oriented adopted by the new democratic government. For the education system, the growth with equity development paradigm had 2 main consequences. On the one hand, the continuation of the pro-market model adopted during the military dictatorship with the same high level of private provision of education. And on the other hand, the development of several compensatory initiatives and policies oriented to improve the deteriorated level of equity in the education system. This combination of market structures and greater state involvement. After I explain about all of the content of this article, so conclusion of the article is the neoliberal tone in international development paradigm in the late 80s did not lead to a decline but to a transformation from state-led to market model of PET in many Latin American countries. However, rather than being the result of external imposition, the influence of these international development ideas was heavily mediated by the neoliberal ideological orientation of the authoritarian regime in Chile. Then, the combination of social structural activism and historical institutionalism in the analysis of TVET policy development in Chile provide important insight for comparative study of institutional change of VET system in developing countries. And we have three ideas. Global and local drivers of VET policy change do not operate separately but are reciprocally interrelated. The influence of international ideas and actors on education policies in Chile has been mediated by the agency and the ideological orientation of national government. While progressive democratic governments adopted the more egalitarian and humanistic development paradigm promoted by ECLA, the right-wing government of the dictatorship opted for the neoliberal regime promoted by multilateral financial organizations like the World Bank. Secondly, in the recontextualization of these international development ideas into concrete VET reform, national policy actors have to accommodate competing social demands and that are evolving over time. The Chilean experience illustrates how VET policies tend to be captured by the productive requirements of the economy during industrialization effort, while the education logic tends to dominate by the steadily deterioration of the economy and expansion of access of education. The last of conclusion finally explain about radical transformation of institutional structures in the configuration of VET system are rare. Even in the case of critical historical junctures as the transition from dictatorism to democracy, the experience of Chile shows how the military dictatorship that ruled the country between 1973 and 1989 was able to impose a radical transformation of the VET system from a state-led to a market-oriented model precisely because of the authoritarian nature of the Chilean state and the lack of political pluralism. Okay, that's my presentation. Thank you for your attention and bye bye.